Good morning.
Morning.
Let's try that again. All right. Good morning.
Good morning.
All right. Okay. It's wonderful to see you all on this beautiful Sunday, and hopefully everybody's ready to have a good time. My name is Beth Andes. I'm a longtime member of this church, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to All Souls Unitarian Universalist Church. First of all, I want to welcome those who are here and those who are online, live streaming. Hi, guys. Thanks for being here as well. Just a quick note, there are, in fact, 5 emergency exits, 3 at the rear and 1 on either side of the stage. So if anything happens, you've got lots of exits to utilize. It's my pleasure to welcome any guests that might be here today. So if you are a guest and feel brave enough, please stand up and tell us your name and where you're from. We'd like to say hello. Yes, this couple.
I'm Jenny Miller, and we're here from Kansas City.
Welcome.
Welcome.
I'm David Miller. I'm here from Kansas City. We are involved with the Unitarian Church in Minnesota.
Welcome. This is closer than Rochester, just pointing that out. Yes, ma'am, the lady in back.
I'm Anita Mason. I'm from Roland Park, and I'm here because of Mary Lindsay. I've been looking for a spiritual source, and so far it's really good.
Welcome very much. Yes, sir.
I'm Kyle Simoto, and my name is Simoto, and from Roland Park.
Welcome. Anybody I missed? All right. Thank you.
Again, good morning and welcome on this final Sunday in the year 2018. Christmas is over. Kwanzaa is underway. The longest night has come and gone, and a new year is on the horizon. A season of endings and beginnings, according to the calendar. But even in nature, winter itself is not an altogether idle season, as we sometimes think. Rather, the trees, the plants, the animals are all preparing for new growth in various ways. Our culture often teaches us only to see the active phases of life when productivity is apparent and progress can be measured with the eyes. Only when we are moving, working, blooming, fruiting are we doing anything important, or so we are told. But the earth is wiser than we are. It knows that the dreaming and the waiting matter also. It knows that nothing precious comes to birth without a time of darkness and inner growth. It may begin with something as distant as a glimpse of silver starlight or one small candle flame, a wish, a hope, a longing, a stirring of the heart. That is how creativity often enters the world, without fanfare, quietly, in the dark moments when it seems that nothing is happening. During this season of deepening, we invite you to honor the intentions that are brooding even now within you, the hopes for yourself, for others, or for the earth, the new directions that your life could take, the creative endeavor that through you might bring light to the world. We invite you to record that aspiration on a New Year's star and add it to the shining branches out in the lobby any time between now, this morning, and the second Sunday of the new year. To name a hope is to strengthen it and give it substance. Then at our last Yule Bach of the season in January, everyone will take home a different star with them and hold that intention for our fellow member all through the new year. To hold one another's hopes in our hearts is to strengthen the bonds that connect us to each other. And knowing that someone else is cherishing that which is quietly growing in you makes everything you wish for more possible and more real. As we kindle once again this chalice flame of our faith, may it remind us on the darkest days that the wintertime does not celebrate the summer sun in all its splendor, but rather the rebirth of the light and the turning toward new beginnings, both in the seasons and in ourselves. Now, do we need to light this? There you go. Now, I tell you what, let me hold it, because I think our candle's burned out. So go ahead. Go ahead.
Hello, my name is Maya, and I light this chalice for a free and responsible search for truth and meaning.
Okay. All right, you light yours for mine. Take yours like you normally would, and just light it. There you go. Perfect. Thank you, Maya. Now, before we rise to speak as usual the words of our community's covenant promise, I invite you to join me in a moment of silence to honor the short lives of Jacqueline K.L. McKean, age 7, and Felipe Gomez Alonso, age 8, both of whom died in the custody of the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement this month. Both were fleeing with their families from the violence and oppression in Guatemala, hoping to find asylum here in the United States. That children die is one of the cruelest tragedies of nature. That they die needlessly of want and violence is a moral failure of all humanity. That they die of bureaucratic inattention in our hands and on our watch is a shame of our nation and a reproach to our policies. May the memory of these little ones move our collective hearts from the vision of higher walls to greater compassion, deeper wisdom, and a larger hospitality. Now, will you rise as you are able and speak once more the words of our covenant promise. Together we affirm, goodwill is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Let's remain standing for our opening song.
On this earth know deep inside their precious worth. When every single soul is free, we'll earn the name humanity. The choice to be the best we can begins the day we say I am. The unity for which we sigh will never come through hate or lie. The light of Kwanzaa now proclaim that when we share our inner flame, the nurture root and branch with pride will harvest peace both far and wide.
The season of Yuletide has always been a celebration of light, both ancient and modern. One of the most recent reflections of this celebration is Kwanzaa, a holiday created in the 1960s for Black people in the United States. It is intended to honor their African heritage and to lift up the values which are of particular importance to communities of color.
The word Kwanzaa comes from a Swahilian expression for the first fruits of the harvest, and the holiday borrows elements from many traditions, including feasting, gift-giving, and storytelling. It is observed for 7 days from December 26th to January 1st, and it includes creating a special area in the home for the woven mat, the fruits, the ears of corn, the unity cup, and the 7 candles. One of these candles is lighted each day, representing each of the 7 principles celebrated at Kwanzaa.
Part of the special feast is shared with family and friends at Kwanzaa is called the libation to the ancestors. This is an opportunity to recall and to honor the memory of our parents, grandparents, and forebearers, as well as those prophets and teachers who have contributed to our understanding of what it means to be human.
For Mother Earth, the garden and cradle of human life. For Father Time, the unfolding history of human endeavor. For the long line of men and women who struggled so that we might see this day. For our ancestors who gave us their many heritages. For the elders here from whom we have so much to learn. For our young people who are the symbol of tomorrow. For the hopes and values that guide all we do. For all the forces that create and uphold life. For the strength to continue in our struggle until all people everywhere are free.
Another part of the Kwanzaa tradition is lighting the 7 candles that stand for the 7 principles celebrated by the holiday. Will you join me in the response on the screen as we light the Mishuma Saba, the 7 lights?
The first and central candle of Kwanzaa stands for unity, for there can be no community without unity.
Therefore, as we rejoice in the light, let us be loyal and loving to one another always.
The second candle of Kwanzaa represents freedom, for no community can survive unless people are free.
Therefore, as we rejoice in the light, let us treasure freedom for ourselves and all people.
The third candle of Kwanzaa means responsibility, for no community can prosper unless people work together.
Therefore, as we rejoice in the light, Let us live and work in harmony with all the citizens of the earth.
The fourth candle, I can't count. The fourth candle of Kwanzaa stands for economic resources, for no community can endure without satisfying basic human needs.
Therefore, as we rejoice in the light, let us seek the prosperity that leaves no one poor.
The fifth candle of Kwanzaa represents purpose, for no community can function without shared aspirations.
Therefore, as we rejoice in the light, let us work together toward a common dream.
Now, the sixth candle of Kwanzaa means creativity, for no community can grow unless it can find new ways to solve problems and to make beauty.
Therefore, as we rejoice in the light, let us share the gifts of our creativity.
The seventh and last candle of Kwanzaa symbolizes faith, for no community can live without hope for the future.
Therefore,
As we rejoice in the light, let us share the gifts of our creativity. Okay.
Hello, my name is Martin Hazlitt. I'm a very proud member of this community, and it's my honor to invite you to make a contribution at this time. For some of us, I'm a procrastinator par excellence. It's the day of reckoning has arrived. I know tomorrow I have to go down to the courthouse to pay my taxes, otherwise substantial penalties will arise. I also am one at the church. I make a once a year payment for my pledge and my pledge on the capital campaign. And I thought I had it all arranged without any problem. But then I go to call my financial institution to get the funds sent to the church. And after an hour on the phone, I realized I wasn't going to get through. This time of the year, and with the volatility in the market, everybody is wanting to know something or other, and to get to someone is almost impossible. So I'm going to miss that deadline. All my life, I put things off and so I have really learned to procrastinate, to wait to the last minute to get something done. And I've also learned of all the consequences. Too many, and some really bad, some that hurt others. If you put off making a contribution to the church for our capital campaign or for our general funds, our budget, now is the last Sunday to do that this year. Now, I know some of you say, well, it's not that important. Taxes, the deduction for taxes isn't important. It's not now. We can't do it anymore. They've taken that deduction away from us. But we should be willing to do it just, I think the word is just for the mere fact that this community means so much to us and that we are its support. We're the only source of support for the church. There's no other place for funds. We have to keep the church open. So if you can, today's the last day this year, make sure that you make an offering at this point. Now, Anthony's, I don't know if I'm supposed to say the offering will now be taken, given and received. Okay, yeah. So now is the time for us to all for the offering to be taken and given. Thank you all.
Will you join me in the words of dedication for our offering? We dedicate our offerings and our actions to the mission at the heart of this congregation, to build a respectful, caring community, to inspire personal and spiritual growth, and to create change toward a just and compassionate society.
Living and Dying Churches by UU Minister Reverend Sam Trumbore. Living churches always have a parking problem.
Dying churches don't.
Living churches are forever trying out new ideas.
Dying churches don't have to change anything.
Living churches have lots of noisy, messy kids.
Dying churches are neat and quiet.
A living church's expenses always exceed their income.
Dying churches hoard their savings.
Living churches are constantly improving and planning for the future.
Dying churches worship the past.
Living churches grow so fast, you forget people's names.
In dying churches, you've known everybody for years.
Living churches move forward in vision and faith.
Dying churches want a guarantee.
Living churches reach out generously to the larger community.
Dying churches keep their people and their money within their own four walls.
Living churches are filled with healthy pledgers.
Dying churches are filled with grudging tippers.
Living churches dream great dreams of beloved community.
Dying churches relive nightmares of conflict.
Living churches rise together to a challenge or a crisis.
Dying churches bicker about whose fault it is.
Living churches make things as easy as possible for visitors.
Dying churches make things as easy as possible for old timers.
Living churches evangelize.
Dying churches fossilize. Thank you. Some of you will recognize this sermon, I hope, from last May. It is the one that was elected by the congregation to be presented again on this golden Oldie Sunday. Renovation construction projects, like the one we are currently engaged in, notoriously take longer, cost more, and cause more inconvenience than anybody anticipated they would in the beginning. Ours has been no exception. You can do all the planning you want in advance. You will always discover facts on the ground that are different from what you had every reason to believe going in. Weather will hamper you. Building codes will have obscure requirements. Deliveries of materials will be delayed. Equipment will break down. It's all part of the process, and it's not usually comfortable. Change never is. We have benefited from exceptionally dedicated and astute leadership in our congregation throughout this project. From our first exploratory visioning processes, through fundraising and design and bidding and construction, many people have given extraordinary time and effort to make this process happen, to upgrade and prepare our facilities for another generation of service to our community and its mission. Every person here today and throughout the past 10 months has encountered personal discomfort. I don't know if you remember when we had first no heat and then no air conditioning. And disruption of our accustomed ways of gathering, working, and nurturing community in this building. I have been so gratified by the good humor and adaptability we have practiced together, our staff, our lay leadership, the members as a whole. So far, at least, and it's still true, we have not been cranky with each other, or impatient with the workers, or critical of our designated decision makers, who can find themselves in a very difficult role. I applaud those folks and all of us for having the cheerfulness to cope with these challenges, like no heat and no access to meeting space, and noise and dust
and all the little annoyances that inevitably come along with this kind of improvement project. This is all the more true because there is not a lot of visible glamour coming out of this work. A bit of new carpet, some upgraded stairs at the Warwick entrance, and an elevator finally. But much of what we are accomplishing with all this disruption will be entirely invisible, safer wiring, more efficient and healthy heating and cooling, a reliable roof. It isn't sexy, but it needs to be done if we are to be responsible stewards of the facilities we have inherited from those who built this church over the past 150 years that we hold in trust for the liberal religious community of the future in Kansas City. Of course, it is tempting to think that once the elevator is up and running and the dust is swept away and the paint is touched up and our resident landscapers have worked their nature magic on our torn up grounds, that things can finally get back to normal. And that is what I want to warn us about this morning when we are looking ahead to the coming year. Friends, there is no going back. Trying to retrieve an old status quo is an exercise in futility. First, because it can hardly ever be done. And second, because even if it could, it would be a bad idea. Like most other living entities, if a church is not standing always on the threshold of change and growth, it is dying. Now that we are so close to realizing our vision of a sound building that can meet our needs for some time to come, we need to begin asking, what's next? There are, of course, more issues around space in this facility. There were plans we had hoped to accomplish with this renovation that we had to set aside for the sake of cost. There is still a long wish list of how this building could be different and better. And I expect that we will cycle back to those desires in due course. But we are about more than maintaining a building. We are about changing lives and having an impact on the world. And it is time to start asking, what does that look like now in today's world? We have been celebrating this congregation's 150-year history throughout this anniversary year, and it is good to be informed by our past. It's a very inspiring story, a story of responding to changes in this city and this nation and this world, with changes in the mission and ministry of All Souls. But we are surrounded these days by a culture of dying church. Having an intentional spiritual community is no longer an expectation of our society. The nones, as in no religious affiliation, are the fastest growing statistical segment. The traditional base of time and talent, as well as financial resources that churches depended on, is diminishing in today's economy. More people are willing to question inherited religious dogma, and that is a fine thing in my view. There is far less brand loyalty to particular denominations. The ways of worship and community building that were comfortable to previous generations don't work as well for the children of the 21st century. These are trends that all religious traditions and communities are facing, and All Souls is not exempt. We need to be thinking creatively about how we communicate on social media, how we invite and educate today's children, how we witness to our values in the present political climate, how we serve the needs of single people and older people and families, how we learn and celebrate in authentically inclusive ways. Our congregation, like all congregations, must be about the business of reinventing itself, or we risk fossilizing into a cultural anachronism. We need to know why we are here in both senses of that phrase. Each of us needs to know for ourselves why we show up here, what this community means to us, how it helps us grow, and what difference it makes in our lives. Collectively, we need to know why this congregation exists. What is its purpose? What would be missing from this city and from the liberal religious movement if we were not here? And so I want to pose two questions this morning. Questions about moving beyond making our building more prepared for the coming decades to making our community and our institution more prepared. The second question has to do with our mission statement, which is one of the more succinct, memorable, and useful UU mission statements that I am aware of. I have one suggestion regarding it, which I will come to in a moment. But first, I wonder whether we are now ready to consider two other foundational documents that up to this point in my ministry here at least have seemed so formidable and even dangerous to talk about that we have simply not dealt with them. One is the usual companion to a mission statement, and that is a vision statement. What is it that we want this congregation to become? When we think about the future of this institution, what is the best case scenario that we can possibly imagine? If we were really doing the work that we exist to do without hesitation or hindrance, what would that look like? As you might expect after 35 years in this vocation, I have my own ideas about these questions, but I cannot answer them on behalf of this community. I do think that after a year spent very appropriately re-examining and celebrating our history, it would be fitting to spend some time considering with equal care our future. We must learn from and be inspired by the past, but merely to be about the business of replicating that past is in fact to betray it. We know that the social and institutional structures that worked 100 years ago won't work now, but the same thing is true of 40 years ago or even 20. New occasions teach new duties, counseled the Unitarian poet James Russell Lowell, and he was right. With the demands and opportunities for the church today both unprecedented, what could we imagine? What might we hope for? This is a conversation to which we should devote as much energy as we did to the care and maintenance of our building. The second document that we need to take up again and breathe life into is a behavioral covenant. It is really only fair that when people join this congregation, they are given to understand explicitly what our expectations of them are. To maintain, as I have heard some people say in arguing against creating such a covenant, that everyone knows the rules of ethical behavior, is a claim of unexamined privilege and cultural dominance, as well as a denial of reality. From civility in the halls of Congress to the abusive casting couches of Hollywood, it is quite clear that there is no standard that can be taken for granted at this moment in our society. And I believe that it is a useful exercise for a community to articulate its boundaries about what is unacceptable behavior. It is not okay for members or staff to exploit the church financially. It is not okay to be sexual with children here. It is not okay to settle disagreements with physical violence. You should expect a certain level of confidentiality from those who have access to sensitive information. We should pay people what we have promised them. We should not randomly damage the building. It's not rocket science, but it only goes without saying if you have the expectation that everyone thinks like and agrees with you. Moreover, one of the many reasons that religious communities like churches exist in the first place is to call us individually and collectively to a higher moral standard than the rather abysmal lowest common denominator of the current public consensus. For us, that is not a biblical standard, certainly. It's not the patriarchal gentleman's code either. Nor do I believe that it is everyone for themselves, do whatever you feel like. So, in what ways do we want the behavioral expectations of this community to ask us to be better people than we already are? If we don't want that, we should say so. But if we tend to agree that this is part of what a church is for, then what is it we are hoping to be urged toward by participating in this community? And no less importantly, how are we going to practice that aspiration and call each other back into covenant when we get absent-minded about it, which is sure to happen from time to time? I think we do this already in certain implicit ways, but that makes it hard to be clear and confident when things get messy and people's feelings are on the line. The work of creating an honest and usable behavioral covenant is spiritual work that demands attention, humility, and growth from those who engage in it. I would like to think that we are now up for that challenge. Finally, a word about our mission statement, which I have always liked and continue to find fruitful in my own work. As I hope you recall, it summons us to build, inspire, and create, to build a respectful, caring community, to inspire personal and spiritual growth, and to create a just and compassionate society. The first two lines make total sense to me. I can see how I and we can move forward toward building community and inspiring growth. The third line has come to feel a bit grandiose as I try to work with it, and especially as I share it with my colleagues of less privileged communities. It feels like the kind of thing that a group of privileged white folks would say, that we are going to create a just and compassionate society, as if society were in our hands to shape as we like. As I've been thinking about change and how difficult and uncomfortable change can be, it struck me that this is what we are really committing to in that last line. We may not be enabled to entirely create a just and compassionate society all by our little liberal selves, but what we can do is to create change toward that just and compassionate society. That way, the parallel constructions work, build community, inspire growth, and create change. And all that we do becomes part of that work, not just our national and international social justice efforts, but everything that helps us create change in our own minds and hearts, in our families and in our work, in the groups we gather here at All Souls, and the organizations we are part of in our neighborhoods and our city and our states. Creating change is hard work. It is spiritual work. It is asking ourselves to be okay with letting go of something familiar and comfortable so that something new and creative that we are not used to can come to life. Now, change comes to us whether we like it or not, whether we accept it or not. But the truth is that the time we spend sulking about change is time wasted and lost that can never be recaptured. Not the time spent grieving our real losses. That is inner growth work and necessary to our humanity. But time spent resisting and resenting that things are not the way they used to be, that costs us dearly and needlessly. Part of what caring community is about in a growing church is helping each other navigate the discomfort of change, to acknowledge our reluctance to let go of the customs that have given us meaning and comfort so that we can offer other different people meaning and comfort too. In that exchange, our highest purpose is found, and our greatest love is given to the world. When we commit ourselves to create change toward justice and compassion in the society around us, we are making a promise to let our light shine, the light of our greatest gifts and highest hopes, the light of truth as we know it today and as we shall yet discover it. The light in our hearts that reaches out to all who are in trouble or in need. The light of faith that together with the whole interconnected web of existence, we could help shape a better, more equitable, more honest, more honoring world for all of us. The early American Universalist John Murray is said to have instructed his congregations to help create change in their world with these words: "Go out into the highways and byways of America, this new country. Give the people something of your new vision. You may possess only a little light, but uncover it, let it shine. Use it in order to bring more light and understanding to the hearts and minds of men and women. Give them not hell, but hope and courage." Each of us, as individuals, may indeed possess only a small light. We do not, after all, run the world, even from positions of relative privilege. That is part of why we have a church, to bring us together, to encourage us to lift up our light. And even as our world and our institutions and we ourselves change, to let that light always shine. So let's stand and sing.
this little light of mine. I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Building up a world, I'm gonna let it shine. Building up a world, I'm gonna let it shine. Building up a world, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fires of commitment. For all these we carry in our minds and hearts until we are together again. John Dewey reminds us the religious attitude is a sense of the possibilities of existence and a dedication to the cause of those possibilities. An idealism of action that is devoted to the creation of a future instead of staking itself upon the past is invincible. So be it.
May a song of peace be yours. May a song of love be mine. May a song of love be ours until we meet